So, hi, everybody. Welcome to tonight's episode of Heal with the Real podcast. I do Heal with the Real podcast because I want to raise awareness for other women or victims, because men are also victims too of domestic abuse. For just to raise awareness for others, really, in case they're struggling in life and they may need some support or some tips on how to move through that cycle of abuse and trauma that is often affected after, you've been a victim of domestic abuse. And I wrote and published my book, Fix Your Future, in July 2021. And in the back of there is all the self-help techniques that I personally use to move forward through the trauma and abuse. So that's my book. And this is really the reason why I do the podcast Heal with the Real, because I'm just passionate about supporting other survivors. And tonight I've got an amazing guest, Alice Smith, and I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio. So you had 8 years of arduous recovery from serious economic and domestic abuse, and you've toured 4 successful stage shows about the experiences of PTSD, and you, as an English teacher, 20 years and a mother of 2 sons. Alice decided not to give up just yet and formed Goddess Education to bring awareness to domestic abuse and survivor mental health. So thank you so much for coming on Heal with the Real tonight. Do you want to just say a little bit about yourself? And I understand that you want to do a little poem at the beginning. So I'm going to hand over to you, Alice.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, and in that introduction, hopefully you laughed when you were listening, viewers, listeners, because it is important not to give up, isn't it? And this is something that I've had to remind myself of. So yeah, you mentioned 8 years. It's been 8 years now. So I thought when I started, maybe some of you were right at the start. You might think, oh, it's not going to take long, but actually it takes a long time to recover, and it's a lot of hard work. I'm just going to start with that because I have found it hard work to get my own mental health strategies. That book looks great. I'm going to buy it. Because I think anybody who's just helping like that, like you are, and just giving us the techniques and strategies, we need a lot, don't we, when we come out of it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I found it harder when I was coming out of it than when I was in it, but maybe we can return to that later. But yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, because the skills aren't there. So your book looks great. So yeah, I just wanted to start with a poem. So when I first came out of this relationship in 2015, I can't believe it now, but for some reason I ended up doing stage shows, 4 of them, and touring them. I went to different countries as well. And I wasn't very well, actually, while I was doing that. I realise now, but anyway, I've done it. So at the time it was something that I was doing, just acting out my trauma, I suppose, literally, to audiences. So I wanted to start with this first one, We Survive. So I think it's a little bit of an anthem, Amanda, because I've done it I did it at a vigil in Chester a year ago. That's the last time I performed. And I've done it in different events. And it's before I started, I just wanted to say that if you're listening or watching, you might hear the different things that happened to me within it. So it was written in real time as I was facing the repossession of my house and job loss, and lost my mental health. I lost it all to get out of the relationship. And I think you'll be able to hear it in there. So having said that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's called We Survive. We walk with bullet holes in our back, but we survive. And we don't wear envy yet, but we drink sugared tea to forget, and we survive. We're no longer welcome on our own doormat, splattered with bills, and we carry a half light that disturbs and chills. We are branded with some invisible debilitation, but we survive. We march for the bus in worn out shoes, And sometimes we lose, but we survive. And those bailiffs' love letters are the price we pay for our freedom. We're hungry now, but hungrier to be free. And we're often beaten, shamed, but we survive untamed. We don't look right. Holes in tights, hairbrush fights, dark-rooted, unsuited to your open plan. But we survive. We sit and bow our heads over coffee. We're too knee-jerk to fit comfortably over cake, and we can't fit in with the fake, but we survive. Now we leave through windows. When you're waiting for the train, we want to jump. We want to take life and smack it in the face, bend it back into place. But we can't handle life the way you can with your sure and steady hands. We are handstands, but we survive. You survived, married, smiled, stockpiled. Your life's back on track. We're good at starting again and again, but we never finish any. That's it.
Wow. That was incredible. That was so brilliant. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Thank you. I feel it. When I performed it, because I don't perform as much now because it takes a lot of emotional capacity. And when I was practicing it then for you, I just earlier on when I was sweeping the floor of my kitchen, I thought, wow, this has just got everything I felt, because I was walking for the bus. I didn't have enough money for the bus. My shoes I had these boots on. I couldn't afford to have them fixed. And had the bailiffs coming in and all the letters on the doormat. And then I went to the friends that I used to have, and that sitting comfortably over cake. I couldn't join in with their conversations anymore. And I was just remembering it. And I went out to the same friends. I don't know if this happened to you. And it was like, I didn't have anything to say because my story was so awful that it would have killed the conversation. So when I say now we leave through windows, I just used to dissociate out of the window, just look out, and there's another bit in there about we don't look right. So I went back into supply teaching, and I didn't look neat anymore. I didn't look tidy. My tights were ripped. My hair, I couldn't afford to bleach my hair. And I just was out in this world, just didn't look right, had people look at me like, oh. And that was what I meant by branded, because I felt, and I still do to a certain extent, that after trauma and after abuse, we're so different that it takes us such a long time to reconnect with the world and to feel okay. Because I don't know whether it was just me, but I just feel so different now.
Yeah, I think you're so right. For me personally, I didn't know I was holding on to a lot of trauma for many years until it kind of came out more recently in lockdown. And that was just because I was in a relationship that wasn't abusive in a way, but it was narcissistic. And it kind of then brought out all this trauma that I'd not known I'd held on to. So I think it does take many years. And, for some, they are still holding on to that unknowingly, because I believe that a lot of the domestic abuse can cause PTSD in many women, and then they are unaware of that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I still have PTSD. And again, like I said at the start, I thought, oh, this is going to go. This is going to go when I get better.
Yeah.
But I'm living with it, and it's only now after 8 years I've realized I'll always have to live with it. And I don't know if other people listening or watching are nodding their head, but I feel like it's a toddler at the table. So obviously I've had kids, And, you know, they're embarrassing sometimes, aren't they, when they're young, and you put them at the table at a pub or something, and they do that thing where they throw the food, or they go underneath, or they scream, and you're desperately trying to like be okay in this event. And I feel like my trauma's like that. So I've lost count of the times that I've been for meals. Even last Christmas I went for a meal, and I just say the wrong thing because my story and my life doesn't fit in polite circles. And so it's for me, it's about working out how we can reconnect in mainstream society as survivors of domestic abuse and as people who are carrying trauma, carrying stories. So for instance, I could be triggered at any point. So, and if I'm triggered, I'll get angry, and people might say I'm being rude.
Yeah.
But the more I learn about trauma, the more I think, no, I've just been triggered by mainstream society. So yeah, I think that we are walking around with PTSD. And as you said earlier on, it's men as well as women. And it's about getting access to help, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and I think you're right. It doesn't go away. It never goes away, but we learn how to deal with it in a better way. And for any trauma, it doesn't go away. It's your past, you know, it is part of your past. But we just learn to have an array of tools that can help us to just move through that day by day. And we just take, some days is going to be good, some days are going to be bad days, but we just got to know when those bad days come, we've got this arsenal of tools that we can use, you know. How far back do we go with you, Alice? Where does your story begin?
Childhood, but I'm not going into that now. Yeah, childhood. But again, you know, hopefully, I'm just saying that because I'm wanting to relate to people. And I, you know, again, if you go into any amount of counselling and therapy, which I have, you end up back at childhood. And I've written a recovery program called 361 Recovery. Hopefully I'll tell you about later, but it's not for everyone because it is asking us to face our part in the abuse. So don't switch me off yet, hear me out. So a lot of people will say, I keep attracting the same type of horrible people. And I was that person, you know, sort of in this cycle, a 360, if you like. And I came up with this idea of 361, the one step out of the 360. The 360 is different for everyone.
Yeah.
And I had to face like my part in, because nobody actually forced me to marry that person. No one forced me to actually go along with it. Having said that, there was an element of me being prey, but I was prey because I was emotionally immature and I didn't have the emotional skills, and that goes back to childhood. So please don't get me wrong, you know, I'm not saying it's our fault, but I am saying for me, taking accountability and having a look back has made me realize how I got myself into these situations. And for a lot of people, myself included, it starts off with a narcissist, and it might be a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and it's just a bit nasty, and it can end up like the relationship I had, which is just horrendous. And each time when I look back, the relationships were getting worse and worse and worse, and I was choosing them. So I believe that we choose them, we choose those people. But as I say, I think for me, it's because I didn't have the emotional education or the emotional skills. And so I find myself having to pick them up now. Things like boundaries, consent is something that I don't really understand that much. Different things like that, expressing yourself, naming your emotions. You know, if you've had childhood trauma, you can't really name your emotions, all these different things. So I put them into this recovery program. So I call it a gift from survivor to survivor. It's a 12-week program. You can work through it yourself, and it's got everything that I had to teach myself or I learned the hard way in there. So I'm hoping it might shortcut recovery for some people.
I love the name 361. I love the extra one to get out of the 360. It's genius. And I think you're so right about emotional awareness, because as a young person, I was the same. I didn't have any emotional awareness, and I'd gone out of a marriage of 10 years straight into another relationship without even giving myself any time to sit with being single or find me. And I think it's so important, emotional awareness, and even teaching young women or young people about being emotionally aware is super important.
Yeah, it's like the holy grail, isn't it? And
Yeah.
you mentioned that the relationship I had, I was 21 days single when I went into this one, which became a marriage within a year. I'm laughing nervously, but I can't talk about it without laughing hysterically. But this person was a predator, don't get me wrong, and they were a person that you wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley, but there was me as prey as well. And it's, I've disappeared, sorry.
Okay, don't worry.
Yeah, it's about things like consent and stuff. If you've not been taught, I don't know whether I'm just thinking about our generation, because some of the things that young people learn now are great, aren't they, and that they talk about. But I was thinking this week, I don't know whether this was a generation thing of powering through. I was taught to sort of power through everything, and the female equivalent of man up. And so a lot of the things that we talk about now, the language wasn't there for us then, I don't feel.
No. And we are told to just get on with it, when we're younger, and not feel our emotions. And, like you said earlier, it is super important to be able to sit with those emotions when they come up for whatever reason, and learn to understand why they're coming up in that particular moment. It is super important as well.
Yeah, we're talking about like advanced level recovery now, really, aren't we? Like if somebody's watching and they're just at the start, they'll be like, oh God, pour me another gin and tonic, I can't do it, So what I did as well is I overdrank, and I drank, and I was an alcoholic basically in any shape or form that you mention it, because I just realized this so I wasn't kidding when I said I ran away to the sea. I did run away to the sea to get away from all my performing and all the thing that had formed around it. So within 2 years, because it was very popular and successful, it had formed a merry band of people around me that were encouraging me to do worse and worse things. And within that, I was drinking a lot. So when you were saying sitting with emotions, I would do anything so I didn't have to sit with emotions. Yeah. So I drank a lot and I was promiscuous, those two things. Now I've come to understand that that's really common. So if anyone listening's doing it, don't feel bad about it. It's apparently really common, but like a lot of things, you don't know it's really common when you're in it. You're just doing it, aren't you?
Yeah.
And then became sober in 2018. So that's like 6 years now, which I'm really pleased about. And doing that, and also became single, I suppose. So I've been single and sober since then.
Amazing.
Since 2018.
Amazing.
And I'm not suggesting everybody do that, but I am saying that it's a massive breakthrough. And that's when I wrote the 361, because it just was, I had loads more time. Now, before then, and I understand if anyone's watching, they think, no thanks, I could not be on my own for like a minute. I had to be like round some random guy's house, or if not, be totally drunk. So I couldn't face and sit with those emotions, quite frankly. So I understand it if you can't. But how did I get there? Well, like sobriety, and then some really good counselling as well.
Yeah. And you're right with addictions, it can be not just alcohol, it could be any addiction, it can be food, you just go, with these emotions that you want to cover up so badly, then you get this blanket of you know, you use some kind of addiction. It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be food, you know, it could be all these sex, it could be all these kind of addictions that you use to cover up how you're really feeling underneath. And it's not until you allow the feeling of those emotions and then go look inward that you realize that it actually you're the problem.
Well, yeah, I suppose so, but God, I hope no one comes away thinking that. Like, because here's my defense. If you're doing it and I was doing it at that point, like, they would have overwhelmed me if I'd have had all those then. Like, if someone's trying to kill me and all this kind of stuff and all sorts of other things are going on, then I can't deal with that, can I? So I'm going to block that out by in whichever way I see fit. They weren't healthy ways to do it, though. So I know that you like journaling, Amanda, and I would say that the writing saved me. So what I used to do is I used to just write all day poems like that. I did about 500, and then I started performing them. The fact that it grew legs and became a bit too big for me and re-traumatized me is on me, isn't it? But the original idea was great, to just journal. And I'm a great believer in that writing and journaling. So some of those poems, I look back and they're so dark, but obviously it was actually a healthy way of getting it out.
Yeah. Have you made a book with all your poems?
I give them, they have to be heard, as you heard at the start. They have to be heard. So I put them onto podcasts. And what I've tried to do is I've got a poem in each of the sections of the 361. So there's 12 poems. Like, they were the best ones that you could read.
Yeah.
But obviously a lot of them are supposed to be heard. So we've got this podcast called 361 Recovery. We did, a group of us, and within there's some poetry, but there's also the recovery program for free on there. You can just listen to it. And then what I did is I intertwined the poems in, because to me the poems are sort of I don't know whether I would say educational or what, you know, in a way they are, because they are like, people will go, oh my God, I thought it was only me that felt like that. So I'd rather use them like that than sell them in a book.
Okay. So how did you do you think you've become more self-aware now? And if you do, how did you?
Yeah, because I didn't have any self-awareness. So I keep looking back and cringing all the things I've said and done during that period at the start when I went crazy, as I would call it. So yeah, I think it's been a long road, you know. All the performing and everything else really helped, all the writing. I went through an angry activist phase where I did Dead Woman's Walking Through Manchester. I've got a great quote from that, you know, the walk through Manchester, the Christmas shoppers, reading out the names of the women who died. This couple come up and went, this isn't very Christmassy, is it? Like, I was thinking it actually is, because more people die at Christmas. But yeah, so all the different activism I did, trying to get it all out of my system. And then writing the 361 Recovery helped me. We in lockdown, we ran it for free for people. So actually helping other people. So from that ends with a kind of how you're going to reconnect with society. So some people went on to do podcasts. Some people went on to start their own groups to help people. So the basic belief is survivorship is a legacy. So if you've survived, it's a legacy. Like, go out and help other people. Like, once you've got to a certain stage, at the start you can't help anyone, but when you get to a certain stage, and I know you do this is why we're talking now, isn't it? Go out and help other people. It's like a legacy. It's like, what are you going to leave for other people? So it either doesn't happen to them, or you can help them recover. So all of those things, I would say. And then different things like tackling forgiveness and other thorny issues, again, through the podcast, through the writing, through the group. because forgiveness comes up in the program, and when we were meeting in lockdown, it was a big thing, and we realized it's not a one size fits all. So I don't know how you feel about forgiveness, but the group decided that there are some things you can't forgive.
I think it's super powerful to forgive, not forgive the abuser, but forgive yourself for what you've put yourself through. That I think it's super important, and the writing, definitely, for me, I think writing or journaling is a page dump, because you're just getting all these thoughts and feelings out onto paper. And even if you're not feeling great, you can write down, right, why am I not feeling great? What is it that's coming up for me now? And just getting it out. And for me, definitely writing the book, going right back to my childhood and really breaking down my whole life, just understanding these little segments as they're going through my life. Wow, okay, so now I know why I was like that. Now I know why I was like that. And it kind of just opened this, not floodgate, but it opened up my understanding, and for me to move on and let go. Because I think that's such an important part, isn't it, of letting go of, if you're always living in that past, you can't move forward, you can't evolve. So I think letting go and forgiveness are super important parts of that.
Yeah, they're so hard. I think they're so difficult, and I think the whole of this thing that we're talking about is loss. So like you lose. I just feel very sad that I lost that person I was, because that person I was very. It makes me feel sad now. They were a certain type of person that was great, and they got broken. That part of it was broken, part of it was stolen, like the trust element, and I don't really trust people now, like these. So I miss, and that's one of the emotions that I think is common. Hopefully other people feel that there's a loss of what you had. I miss this more than obviously losing my house. Economically, it's a massive blow, but there's this other thing underneath that's losing yourself, losing your reputation when a smear campaign is started. Maybe some people listening have had that. The loss of reputation, it's so annoying, isn't it? Because you know that you're not this person, and it's being smeared all over the place. The loss of other family members. Say if you were a family person, you were friends with all that other person's family, the loss of all their friends. So yeah, I do think it's a load of losses. And then this loss of the illusion of happy ever after, and the loss, if you were married, the loss of that as well. I just think it can be quite overwhelming at times, that loss. But if you can name it, if you can see it like that, I think it does help. The cover of the book has got like my hands covered in ash, because when I was leaving my house, I did this bonfire in the back garden, and it's got my hands covered in ash and then a butterfly in the ash. And I thought, that's it. It's the ashes of your life. You stand in the ashes of your life, and then you rebuild.
You become the butterfly.
Yeah, maybe so, but there's something about acknowledging the loss. Like if you skip onto a new person, like we've both admitted we've done, and by the way, no judgment if people have done that, you skip out a stage, which is the loss, like the sitting with the loss. And who wants that? Who wants to do that? That doesn't sound like much fun, does it? But that's where you can grow and change. But yeah, it's not I don't know how I could sell it to people, but I suppose I could by saying like I've changed so much from doing it. So
would you say that's part of the trauma bond in a way?
In what way do you mean?
Because often when we've been with somebody that is abusive or narcissistic, and it's, say, for example, the beginning of a relationship where it's all that love bombing and it's very quick to, all of a suddenly you think this man's amazing because you're getting all this, I love you, or I can't do enough for you, da da da. So it's building you up.
It's nice.
And then you then suddenly get the real side of it, you know, the gaslighting, the which you've already mentioned, you know, the smear campaigns. And then it's like, hang on a minute, where's that guy? Where's that guy that was in the beginning? And then you're kind of trauma bonded because you're still wondering where that guy was that you first met. Was any of that, did that happen to you?
Yeah, I think I had a pretty common experience, but like I say, I want to emphasize to people that we don't know we're in it when we're in it. So there's probably people listening and watching that are in it and they don't know, and that's okay, because I didn't know I was in abuse when I was in abuse, because my head was just completely stirred up and with so many mind games going on. But yeah, the if you're with a master manipulator, then you do see that nice side, though. You know, and it can be, it's timed. You don't realize this at the time. It's only when you look back, isn't it, like anything? But you get the horrible side, but then you get the nice side. So that keeps you, doesn't it? It keeps you on, because just as you're thinking it's unbearable, they go really nice, and then you think it's you, because you think you've imagined it all. And then as soon as you can't trust your instinct anymore, they've got you. I feel like the final straw in a relationship is if you betray yourself, and I think an abuser will work towards that, whether they use it your pets or your kids or your parents. They'll work out what it would mean to betray yourself, and then they'll try and get you to do it. And I've got a theory that if you betray yourself, you can't get out of it, because I was starting to betray myself at the end. So I think that's something to watch out for, because then they turn it back on you and go, what sort of person are you to have done that? And then you know that you've betrayed yourself, and they've got you then, haven't they? They can keep turning it around on you. But it's so difficult to leave, isn't it? People will say, why did you stay? Well, you hear this question all the time, and I feel like it's really rude and shaming. Why did you stay? So if anyone gets that next week, have a think about it, because it's a shaming question. Don't answer it.
Or, she must have done something for him to do that, you know, or that's one as well, you know, is it? And who are you to make that judgment on others? I think you don't know until you don't know what goes on behind those closed doors. So I think it's so wrong to judge. But we do. People do.
Yeah, and I think the mainstream people want to ask us this question because they want to think that it could never happen to them, and that you're the special breed of person that somehow it happened to. Because when I was teaching, I was in a staff room and I mentioned that I was getting my house repossessed, and it was like I'd said I was a child murderer or something. Like, no one wanted to think that someone fairly normal like me, it could happen to. Like, oh no, that doesn't happen to people like us. And I think it's the same. Like, why did you stay? Like, I wouldn't have stayed. Oh, right, thanks for that. But I think a better question is, why did you leave? So if you have left, everyone, like, try and pinpoint why. And I'm willing to bet it comes down to you were nearly betraying yourself.
Yeah. So how do you move through everything then? Where was your life when it really started to turn around for the better? So you've done your 360 program, 361. What happens after that? Where are you now?
Well, the one thing that helped me turn my life around, the number one thing, was being sober. That was so on a beach, March 29th, 2018. And I recommend that to anyone, even if it's just for a short amount of time, because it clears your mind. And once I gave up drink, once I gave up men earlier than that, I realized it wasn't men that was the problem. So I realized underneath the rock, so any addiction, you've got another one lurking underneath the rock, haven't you? And underneath it all was drink. Everyone else knew it about me, but I didn't know it. So that's where I turned around there. But now I'm, it's been a long time since I've spoken about this. I can't remember the last time I had an interview, and I used to do these all the time. So it feels quite strange, because it's like, what do I want to say now? You know, what do I want to say? But I want to say to people that if you've listened to this or seen me and you've thought, oh, look at her now, like that. Like, what I hated when I was first out of that relationship was people who just looked as if they had it all together, and that they were saying that that was the end goal. And then if I bought something like a book or a ticket or something, I too could be them. So I suppose I want to say the reverse of that. Like, there is no finish line in recovery, but there is definitely a way of finding you. And in my opinion, that's taking a partner out of it for a while, and it's taking drink out of it for a while. And it's, I know that's not possible for everyone, but there needs to be some sort of gap from dating to look back and see your patterns. Because if you want to keep going on and saying, well, it's the men, they always come up to me and they're always horrible, then I think that's only half the story, everyone. So it's about, you know, being brave enough to face. So in 361, it's called Own Your Ugly. And you have a look at what your ugly side looks like. And only once when you've kind of met it, can you really carry on. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever done that, Amanda, but it's part of it, isn't it, to look at your own stuff?
Yeah, and understand where you're going wrong in the situation. It's so important. And so when you're talking about alcohol, I think alcohol or any addiction can lead to other things, the wrong things in your life. I gave up alcohol in January. It's the best thing I've ever done.
Oh, congratulations.
I didn't really drink a lot, I must say. I wasn't a big drinker, but I just enjoy getting up on a morning and doing the things that I enjoy doing. And I hate wasting time or getting up with this hangover. And it's amazing. I love it. Best thing I've done, like 6 months, and I'm super proud. I know.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well done.
Yeah. I just woke up in January, and it wasn't a New Year's resolution thing or anything like that. It was just like, I don't need to drink. I don't want to drink. And I've been out quite a few times without, you know, to weddings and out with friends, and I've not drank. So I'm super proud of that.
You should be. That's brilliant. It really clears your mind, doesn't it? I mean,
really
if somebody's watching and thinking, oh, I'm not doing that forever, you don't have to do it forever. Just do it for a little bit and just try it. Because that helps you. Like you say, I wake up in the morning now, and I had, because I was drinking so much, I found it really hard for the first 2 years because you got so much time. I was like, oh God, how am I going to fill all this time?
Yeah.
But of course, you fill it with yourself. And I don't mean in an indulgent way. I mean, things, whatever you like I like swimming. And you know, I set up a not-for-profit called 361 Life Support in lockdown. You're not telling me that was because I was sober. I needed something to do. So lockdown was my most productive period ever. We did 25 podcasts. A 361 sober group, the 361 recovery program twice, and set up the whole thing. And I think that was literally because I wanted to stay sober. So I think you can be really productive when you put your addiction on the shelf for a little while.
Hugely. And because you've got all this time. Normally be in bed with this hangover going, oh no, I don't want to get up.
I didn't like it at first. I was like, oh God, what are we going to do?
Yeah. Do you know, I look at my past as something that is a superpower. I don't know if you look at that, but I really look at my past as a superpower, because I wouldn't have gone on to do the things that I've done had these things not happened to me in the past. So I feel blessed. I feel really blessed. I know this sounds mad, and it might sound mad to people that are going through the trauma currently and still not coming out that other side. But I truly feel blessed because I wouldn't have gone on to do the things that I've done now, and created the things that I'm creating currently. I feel like it's a superpower.
I love that, and I'm going to have that if that's okay, and stay as well. I remember going to the solicitors, and I used to go and throw up in the solicitors in the toilet bowl. You see, and none of this did I know was PTSD. I just thought, oh, I'm sick every time we go to the solicitors, and then there was no other thought process. But as I was looking down that toilet bowl, I used to think, what will become of me? And in one of the plays, it was a poem there, and people used to cry and go, oh God, you know, because it was literally like I've broken up from someone, what will become of me type of question. So you mentioned there people going through it now. I think that's what it is. If you're there right now, you're probably thinking, what's going to become of me?
Yeah.
But now I prefer to give this question, like, what am I becoming? So I think I may write another poem that's less brutally sad, which actually says, oh, what could I become? But I know it's really difficult. You can't see forward, and that's what's so difficult, isn't it? Because let's get down to brass tacks. The person that you were sleeping with, you loved, whether you want to admit it now or not, you did at the time, and you trusted, is the one betraying you. And I think that's so bad for your mental health, because you have to do a very quick divert, don't you? Because you've got all these huge problems, and they've caused them, and yet they were your mate, they were your friend, they were your mate for life. I mean, that's not going to be easy, is it? You have to give yourself, you just got to take it easy at the start.
And something that you hit on just at the beginning of that conversation is the language that we use around ourselves. You know, just changing that language is super important. You know, when we talk, you know, I can feel much, and I know when I'm doing it now. You know, if I make a mistake, I used to go, oh, you silly cow, or what, you know, whatever I used to call myself, and now I go, oh, it's like, you know, it doesn't matter. Yeah, you've made a mistake, just move on. Or just changing that language, that narrative around ourselves is super important. You know, for me, positive affirmations were something that was really important, to do that in front of the mirror every day. You know, I am enough, giving myself a high five, smiling at myself. And it's so awkward at the beginning. And when I first started doing that, I just used to look in the mirror and go, well, I don't like myself. So this is really difficult. But if you keep doing that, you're just turning that muscle in your head to actually, you're all right, and you start to believe in yourself again. And it's you know, it was one of the first things that I did in that move to self-love.
Yeah, it's powerful.
And I believe you've got a poem.
Well, yeah, there's a little story behind this one to finish. Okay. So this is a funny story here. It'd be good if I could share the picture, but I don't have it. So I went to Weston-super-Mare. I went to live there, and that's where I got sober, which is ironic because it's the European rehab capital that I found out after. But I just did it myself for free. So, but at the time when I wrote this, I was still getting drunk. So I went out on the beach and got really drunk. And I was sitting there thinking, oh God, like, is this ever going to get any better for me, kind of thing. And then I passed out, and then the police come to me to ask if I was all right. When I went to live there, I never saw a policeman, by the way, in brackets, but yeah, they called the police because I was there like this. But that's a funny story behind the poem, that it was my attempt. I don't know whether you've ever done this. It was my attempt to picture, like I was saying before, picture something that isn't there yet. Like, my life was hopeless. I was like about 4 months away from having no home with my 2 sons and 2 dogs. And I just couldn't see a way out of this. The fact that I was getting drunk at a beach is just like, you know, I don't know what I was doing there, but I couldn't see forward. So this poem was like me going, one day, things are going to be better. Honestly, they are. So this is it. All right. I'll see if I can remember it. Okay, one day you will count 1,000 beautiful things and not stop at 13. What you have been, blame-faced, child, hated, will be less than what you can be. Beauty, power, understated. One day you will sit alone with sunshine for company and not look to the right for a shadow. You will be light to so many seeking the truth in flight. One day you will collect friends like shells instead of treading on them. Time spent really will be love spent. One day you will one day you will face the mirror, step back from the edge and belatedly embrace not the crazy, but the free. This is that day. So it gives me goosebumps because that was my 2016 self telling me that one day that would happen. And that is my life now. It is my life. I do sit in sunshine a lot. So I want to say to anybody out there that's thinking, I can't see forward, there is a forward, there is something ahead. And it's really common to feel like there isn't anything, but you have to hold on, don't give up, hold on. And I'm not just bull messing you, because I have seen it myself. You have to sometimes believe it when it's not there. And that could be 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, you just have to dig in somehow and believe it, and it will come to pass.
It's so important that you mentioned that, because I meditate. I meditate every morning, 10 minutes before I get out of bed. I have a morning routine set out, and I do things in a row of what, you know, a certain things that I do: exercise, meditation, journaling, before I even begin work. But meditation is super important, because I think for somebody who's going through trauma, 80% of the time we're in our heads thinking, and it's just stopping, taking that deep breath and just being able to sit in yourself and in that moment. And so 10 minutes before I even get out of bed is super important for me to just focus on what my day is going to look like, what my goals ahead of me are going to look like. And I have, at the weekend, I was at the WOW Festival. It's a women's only wellness festival. It was incredible. I delivered a couple of vision board workshops to a number of women, and they all put all these things out on their vision boards. It was incredible, really. And one woman went, well, I'm going to draw an arrow boat because I don't think I'm going to find one in the magazines, as she was, you know, doing a vision board. And the next magazine she picked up, there was an arrow boat, which was just, and I love serendipitous moments like that, because you really do manifest when you start to think about these goals in your life and where you want to go to. You can manifest them into your reality. Obviously, you've got to do the actions as well, but you know, I have keep ticking off all these things on my vision board because, well, I have it as a screensaver on my phone and I look at it every day. And it's just incredible, just ticking off these goals as they go along, you know. And I think whatever you put in your mind, then you automatically go and do that in reality. So I think that's super important what you said there, you know.
Yeah, you have to have leaps as well, don't you? Like I went to the sea. I've always wanted to live by the sea, and then I went away for a bit, and then I'm back now, and it's beautiful. It's like, and each time I thought I'll never get to that, and it took a bit of a leap of faith, like going to a new place. I've moved 5 times in 6 years, and each time I haven't known the flat when I've gone into it. You know, that's like a leap. That's like, oh God, I don't know anyone, here we are again. So it does take leaps. But yeah, I think your vision board sounds amazing, and I'm never going to forget how it felt to just be like, these poems today have reminded me I'm never going to forget how maybe some people do feel right now. I'm never going to forget it. That absolute lack of hope. But if you keep on marching, even if your boots are broken, which mine were, they were broken for 3 years. You know, you can get new ones eventually. Like you don't have the skills just out of trauma to be able to do it. Obviously, you've got to build like any muscle, any skill, like thing, like your book, all those skills. And mine is some more emotional, I think. You've got to set your mind to the fact that you're going to have to do the work on it. But look what can happen, you know, you can become somebody that your abuser wouldn't even recognize. They'd walk past them on the street because they wouldn't even know it was you anymore. Wouldn't that be great?
And it's just that one step forward every day. Keep taking those steps. You don't have to do the whole staircase. We're just doing one tiny step. Just keep on moving forward. And I think what you said about, you know, I was going to go to the seaside and I didn't know anybody. It's like moving into that fear. Yeah, you didn't know anybody, but you went ahead and you did it, and you moved through that fear of, oh God, what if I don't make friends? What if I don't, you know, and all that's going through your head, but you did it anyway. So
it gets easier, yeah, because I've done it twice now. So it's like the everything that you're being asked to do gets easier. You know, like I had to go to court. Maybe some of you are thinking about going to court. The fact is, you're never going to forget it, but you know, it is going to get easier. It's like all these difficult experiences we have to go through. You know, having to keep in contact with your abuser because you've got kids with them, things like that. Like, you know, there is support out there as well, isn't there?
Yeah,
there is support out there. You can find it, and people have done it before you as well. And so try and get talking to people who've already done it, because that's the best thing, isn't it? Especially people who've been through abuse, like they get it. You don't have to spend your first half an hour explaining yourself, like why you stayed. You don't have to. They're never going to ask you that. I hate that question so much.
Yeah, me too. Do you know, Alice Smith, you've been an absolute pleasure to
thank you.
on my podcast. You really, really have. Is there any final words before we say goodbye to our listeners?
Yeah, if you want to find me, I'm at 361diamond.co.uk. Send me a message, and yeah, I'll leave you with this tagline that I came up with by sitting in lockdown, getting sober. I had some cravings, I'll tell you. Victim, survivor, what lies beyond? So if you're watching or listening, I want to ask you, what lies beyond? What is there? So beyond means you got the horizon, you can't see, can you? If you go to the seaside this summer, look at the sea, you can't see that Dublin's over there or whatever, but it is over there. Like whether you can see it or not, it is there, and that is your future. Whether you can see it or not, it's there.
Thank you so much. And
thank you for the invite.
And thank you for everybody that's listening. I hope you got some tips and some hints, or, you know, anything that could help you or support you. Thank you so much.
Bye, Amanda.